This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
I know electric cars are coming, so I said I just need to build a car. Just like everything else I've ever done, I didn't get into racing by watching. I got into racing by building a car.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Kevin Dubois. Today's guest, we have Sasha Anise of OnPoint Dyno. They're a shop up in Canada, and I don't know exactly where, but he'll fill us in on that. But Sasha has recently hit my radar, and I realize he's actually done quite a few things that I'm aware of. But one of them was the Speed Academy guys did a video on a really fancy Tesla converted, what's a Lotus converted Tesla electric car, and that kind of really, I feel that kind of is the direction a lot of the technology is going. So I really wanted to talk to him about it, the business side of it, not just the tech side of it. And then while I was kind of looking into what Sasha did, I realized he also does several, or at least a very, very fast global time attack car, which will be going to World Time Attack as well. So I'll let him fill us in on that. So Sasha, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Very cool. So Sasha, why don't we go ahead and get started? Why don't you tell us about yourself? How did you get started in cars? Take us back to when you really got involved with it, your education, whatever it may be that, got you to where you are today.
Oh man. Yeah. It's, I think a lot of people that have started a business kind of would have a similar story to me. Just, grew up loving cars, kind of 15, 16 years old kind of range. Started tinkering with them, doing some work for friends here and there. And so, I went to university for a year, didn't like it, and pretty much was obsessed with my car, which was an S14 at the time. And, we had gotten into a little bit of trouble, racing around the street and this and that. So I didn't really have a driver's license anymore. So, So I was basically forced to, if I wanted to drive this car, I'd take it to the racetrack. So it was a really good way to force me to go to the racetrack. And so I just rented a small space. And at that time, pretty much it was just to have a place to work on my own car. And then we started doing some, engine swaps. And then I started road racing the S14 and, a local series in Canada. And, that was a really good way for me to learn all kinds of aspects of building a performance car. Everything has to work on the racetrack. You can't have a lot of power if you can only do one lap before it overheats, right? You can't.
Right.
You'll find out right away if your brakes don't work, and so everything has to be good for a lap time to come together. And so that's kind of how I got started. And we were like the underdog, and I really enjoyed being the underdog in racing. It was fun. And then the shop started to grow a little bit. And we did engine swaps, a little bit of fabrication. We did alignments. We had an alignment machine, a couple hoists, so that was kind of a thing. And then eventually one day someone came in the door offering me to run 3 Hyundai Genesis coupes in a Canadian touring car. So like Canadian, same kind of thing as World Challenge, if any of your listeners are familiar with that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But the Canadian version of it, so a lot less exciting.
Right.
But anyway, we said, yeah, sure, let's do that. And we ran those cars for a couple of years. We won the championship as well. So it was a lot of learning on the racetrack. And at the same time, I had a 350Z that I had bought after selling my 240, putting it out. And I ran that in Coney Challenge, which was basically, I mean, Coney Challenge is a series you run if you want to spend $30,000 or $40,000 a weekend kind of thing. That's now called Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge. And we showed up with an open trailer. I mean, the car, like we had nothing, right? We had literally an open trailer and the fuel rig to put fuel in the car on the back of a pickup truck bed. Like every single other team has a 52-foot hauler, right?
Uh-huh.
And I remember we showed up to this race in Quebec. They were just disgusted that we were showing up with this open trailer. And the move-in day was Tuesday, and we couldn't get off work, and all the crew like couldn't take an entire week off work. So we showed up, still a day before practice, but well after the move-in day. And anyways, it was really, I was pushing my luck to try and run in that series. So, but it was a really great experience. And we did pretty well, actually, considering. So after that, I went, continued running the Genesis coupes. And that was always my favorite part of the business, the electronics and that sort of thing. So long story short, I closed my shop and got out of it because I wasn't making any money and I was fed up with it.
What was your shop called before? Was it still OnPoint Dyno or something different?
No, it was called SG Motorsport.
Okay. And what kind of time frame did you start that and I guess end it?
I pretty much started as soon as I left university. So that was 2004.
Okay.
Until 2012.
Okay.
And that, looking back in hindsight, there was a lot of lessons that I should have learned earlier. Like, never charge enough. Like, the same old thing, right? Like letting the customers take advantage of you and not being organized. I think I had a new computer every 6 months because the hard drive would crash and then I wouldn't have backed anything up. Like, everything's gone. My accounting information's gone. Like I get audited by the sales tax, the Ontario government sales tax department, and I'm just like, I got nothing, man. Like, I'm sorry, I lost it all. So, disaster. And I was 21, 22 at the time. So, it was okay to learn it when you were young, I guess. I wouldn't want to be making those mistakes when I'm my age now.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so that played, I think, a lot into the role of why I decided to close the business, because it wasn't very profitable, and it kind of plateaued. For 2 or 3 years, I kind of just saw nothing progressing, and so I thought, I want to get out of this and just try something else. So I went and worked in the corporate world for a year. It was like 9 months I got out of there. I was like, okay, definitely this is not what I want to be doing at all. I learned that very quickly. And then I took 2 months off and I thought about it. And I thought back to, I really enjoyed doing dyno tuning. I really enjoyed working with electronics. I knew that there were, reasonable margins in dyno tuning. I think the community kind of understands that dynos are expensive and they are willing to pay for them a little bit. Whereas if you would look at like an alignment machine could be $80,000 Canadian. So maybe $60,000 US for a good Hunter machine. But then shops are doing alignments for like, $100.
Yeah.
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 Like, dude, like your shop rate is $80 and an alignment takes you an hour at least. So how are you paying for this machine?
Yeah, it never gets paid for. I've done the math
Yeah,
many times. I never could justify it unless you're doing them in 30 minutes. So
exactly. So I thought, okay, the industry kind of gets it that dyno tuning is expensive a bit, and the equipment costs money on top of the tuning time. So I said, if I'm going to get back into this industry, which is like just horrible for trying to make money in, then dyno tuning is what I want to do. And I said, I want to do like my friend Dan Pye did at the time. He ran a business called U-Tune Dyno. So he had this side business where he had a Dynapack in a trailer, and he didn't need a shop. He didn't have any overhead. He just towed the dyno to another shop that had a customer's car that needed to be tuned, or they had a tuner and they just wanted to rent the dyno, and then he would do that. So he got out of it because, he had a new full-time job and it was just too much for him. But I thought that was a great business model, so I just stole it and he didn't mind. We're still good friends. And yeah, and then I just became really busy doing that. And we've got some great partnerships with a few shops around the city in Toronto, and it's been growing every year. And we've been helping to kind of educate the consumers in our area as much as we can. Teaching them about boost leaks and teaching them about wastegate plumbing. Like, everyone brings their boost controls set up wrong for some reason to dyno. I don't know why. And we try and do as much as possible to help the customer when they come for the dyno tune to be the car be ready. I mean, as ready as they understand it to be ready. A lot of people will look at a car and say, this will not have any problems. Obviously, they just don't have the experience to see what the problems that will be there, right?
Right. And that's like 75% of every dyno tune I have to do mechanical work before I can tune it.
Yeah, but that's the thing for me. I don't do any mechanical work. Like, it's very cut and dry. Like, if you bring me something, I'll install a boost controller for you, maybe. But that's it. Like, you have to be ready. We don't do any mechanical stuff because that, to me, it was a slippery slope. So
most of the work you're doing is with other shops, and I'm guessing.
Yep. We do a lot of business to business with other shops, and we also do have our own space now that we use, so we can sometimes bring guys if we don't have a shop to go to. But those would usually be cars that have, just bolt-ons type of thing. Okay. like a big build. If it's turbo upgrade or built engine or something like that, it'll either be the shop or the guy that's built the car is at a high level and is able to. We have confidence that it's going to work. We're not going to take something on that definitely needs professional mechanical work that we're not going to offer. While we were doing the dyno tuning stuff, we've also been developing the 350Z that we ran in Coney Challenge originally. We've been developing that into a time attack car. And so that's been really, it's been more enjoyable than road racing for me, because road racing is kind of repetitive. You were racing against the same guys at the same tracks over and over again. And after a season or so, you pretty much figure out who's going to win and who's going to be second, who's going to be third. And the series starts putting rules on you that you don't really want to do. You have to cut your splitter down, or you have to run at a certain ride height, or you have to lower the boost pressure. In the case of the Hyundai, it's not in the Z, obviously. It's naturally aspirated. So I enjoy time attack because you can just do whatever you want. The only thing that's holding you back is your ability to go faster. My goal with that car has been to keep it naturally aspirated, and we've really kind of had a good time with that thing.
Is that not going to hold you back? I mean, some of these cars are like 1,000 horsepower now, aren't they?
I know. When we started, it was like attainable. If you could run like a GT2, ALMS GT2 time, which would be like a 118 at most sports, so I don't know how it converts to like Road Atlanta would be. Anyway, it was attainable with 500 horsepower at the engine. But that's kind of always been my goal. I just want to do what ALMS GT2 cars did in 2008. I don't need the car to be like, it's never going to be this wild full aero time attack car. But I'm still in this mindset of that time attack where there are no rules, and I'll just build the car the way I like it and go as fast as I can that way. I really enjoy the engine being naturally aspirated. I mean, it's just so responsive. It sounds so good.
I bet it's a lot more reliable that way too.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. The oil temperatures are super high. The thing's revving to 9,000 RPM. It's pretty strung out in that way.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, once you start getting to 1,000 horsepower, you can't keep the head on the block and all this. So
yeah, one lap at a time, and then you rebuild the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we went down to Global Time Attack with that thing. We've done some regional racing here, and it's basically like a cup car now. It pretty much has a speed of like not the newest cup car, but like the one generation old cup car. So
do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur?
I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur when I first started SG in 2004 or whatever. I was just a kid that wanted to work on cars, and having a place to work on my race car was a necessity, and I would pay for it and try and pay for racing by working on customers' cars. in my free time. But then once I stopped that business and started OnPoint Dyno, I look at it from very much more of a business standpoint of, could I bill properly? Would it make sense? Would it make business sense? Would my time be worth something? Even considering emailing customers and doing accounting and all that, would it still make sense? And I was also thinking, could I save up and get a rental property? And there's other products that I can produce, or what else can we get into? So I think my mindset has changed over the years for sure. I would say now I kind of feel I definitely would never want to work for anyone else. So I guess by default that makes me an entrepreneur.
And
if I don't want to be homeless, I guess those are the other options.
Right. And so when you went to work for the corporate, you said for like 9 months, like,
Yeah.
I mean, was it just, like having to do what somebody else said? I mean, what made you want to stay in the, I guess, do it yourself sort of mentality, I guess, running your own business?
Well, the thing that bothered me the most about the corporate world was all of the BS and kind of the waste of time. You'd go and have meetings and nothing would ever happen. And if something was going to happen, it was a committee and you'd have to wait forever. And there was no passion. No one cared about what they were doing. It was just like 9 to 5. I remember like looking at the clock and thinking, I haven't watched a clock like this since I was in school. Normally a day goes by like it's 10 p.m. Like, oh my God, where did the day go? This is ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, there were so many reasons.
And it's amazing. Like, I have no idea how they make money. Like, how do corporations like that make money when everybody's twiddling their thumbs or, like not actively participating?
They're not efficient, man. They're not efficient. Like, I look at running a small business and, like I have got to be on it every day. And I've got one employee now and, he's got to be on it every day. And I don't understand it. I mean, maybe one day I'll understand it, but I think I'm just like a small fish in the big pond, in the big ocean. And I'll just never be able to think at that level. Like these guys just have it figured out. They have enough revenue coming in that they can just afford to be
completely inefficient everywhere. At every
I don't
level.
know. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Okay, so how has location played a role in your success? Do you have a lot of competition up there with dynos? I can't imagine there's a ton of them, but
well, we've been a little bit fortunate with that because there weren't a lot of dyno shops around that did Japanese cars, and the ones that did either didn't specialize in it full time, or if they did specialize in it full time, they're just not at a really high level. Like, in other words, they blow up a lot of engines. So it's pretty easy to get more customers when people just want to go somewhere else.
Okay.
I hope that my competition is not listening to this podcast and that hates me, but that's really the reality. Like, I didn't do any marketing really. I just sponsored a couple of cars when we first started out. And I mean, I knew the community pretty well, obviously, because I had a race shop for 5 years before that. And I've been racing since for a long time. So, but yeah, I mean, if there were other dyno shops out there doing a really good job, I feel like I would have had to really work for it. And I don't feel like I had to really work for it to get customers.
Very cool. So have you ever actually doubted yourself and, wondered if this isn't going to work, and how do you overcome that feeling and move forward?
Yeah, I doubt myself all the time. And, I really struggle with that. I'll give you an example. We were building headers at my shop, SG, a long time ago. We made these long tube headers for 350Zs, and they took lots and lots of hours. And we were charging $2,300 US or whatever for these headers, and people could buy headers for $600 or whatever. I said I should really get these made. Like, I should really just step up and make 50 sets. And, maybe make them overseas if I have to, or just to scale up to get to that next level, right? So that we're not hand making every set of headers on a jig that we made, Mickey Mouse. but I was too afraid to do it. I doubted. I didn't think we'd be able to sell them. I didn't think I'd be able to market them, and so we never did it. And I think that's like a recurring trend with me. Like I'm afraid to kind of do something that's not going to pay off in the next 2 or 3 months because I'm not sure if it ever will. And so I feel like maybe I've missed some opportunities because of that.
So you're very cautious about it.
Yeah, I guess I'm maybe overly cautious, but you know, sometimes I'm not too. On things I'm really confident about, I'll be nervous, but I'll just believe it's going to be okay. Like building the electric car, I was just like, it's going to be fine. But when it comes to like investing a lot of money into trying to sell things, I think I just can't sell things. I really have a difficulty with that.
But the electronic stuff is obviously your forte, though. That's what you're doing a lot of that, like tuning and ECUs and that sort of thing, huh? Like the data logging acquisition stuff.
Yeah. So, I skipped over a bunch of our history. Sorry. I've also been working as a data analyst and a driver coach and doing setup work in Continental Tire and Porsche GT3 Cup, and kind of that goes alongside with what we do at OnPoint Dyno. And so I've been trying to help push that more to the grassroots guys and to the time attack guys that are going out there and, you know, maybe looking at engine data, maybe, but probably not. Only if there's a problem. So we became a MOTEC dealer a few years ago. And I've used MOTEC pretty much throughout my whole racing career. And I've used AIM and I've used some other things. And I really enjoy MOTEC. I mean, it's the best. And it's not like Bosch where it's out of reach. You can't see the software. You don't know what it's like. You got to have a Bosch engineer on site basically to do anything. MOTEC is like, it can be as professional as you want. It can be in an LMP1 car, you know? Mm-hmm. But it can also be on a club racer's car. And you can have almost the same capability. At least anything you'd want to do at a club racing level, you can do it just as well as the most pro team can do it. And there's room to grow forever. Like, unless you get to Formula One, maybe you can have MOTEC and it'll be fantastic. So I really like this stuff, and I've never seen MOTEC hardware be a problem before. Yeah. You know, I've seen people say, "Oh, it's the ECU," but like it's never been the hardware before for me with MOTEC stuff.
Yeah, and I've had very big difficulty trying to sell my customers on that stuff because, you know, they're able to race without it, and so like, yeah, it's going to be $10,000 to get the boxes and wire them in, and so it just seems like a big expense that doesn't actually make you like immediately faster. You know, the payback is when you look at the data and analyze it, and you know, like, hey, we can change suspension, we can do some different engine tuning. You know, you can do some of that stuff, but you know, without the data, you can't ever do any of that. So it's just a struggle for me to try to sell that stuff.
I know, and I think technically minded people maybe are not very good salesmen inherently. Like, you're kind of one or the other, I feel like. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's exceptions to that. I'm sure there are exceptions to that, but I feel like that's the case. And with the data stuff, whenever I've gotten someone to the point where they've looked at their data and I've told them, look, here, here, and here, if you do this, you could go faster. Look at this. The car shouldn't be doing this. We can fix that. And look at the engine, like it's overheating. You wouldn't have known. The engine would have blown up, but because we have the dash, it warned you. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? You know, and they're like, oh, I wish I had my data from 3 years ago so we could compare it and I could see where I've gotten better and how much that extra 40 horsepower made in terms of lap time. And am I braking earlier now because it's going faster? And you don't have that old data because you didn't have any data.
Right.
So they realize that then. But by that point, it's usually been, you know, they've already had an AIM dash or they've already had a race pack dash or, you know, like something that doesn't even do lap times hardly. Yep. You know, and so you never get the first go around with these guys. They kind of have to learn the hard way, I find.
Yep. So what's the worst experience you've had in business? And would you do it over if you had a chance?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I can't say there's one specific thing. I would say the worst thing I've done in business is what I haven't done. I feel like maybe there's some risks or some steps I should have tried, that I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the same time, I could have taken risks and then lost everything. So
the joys of doing it yourself, right?
yeah, it's kind of hard to look back and think about that. But we've been okay. Like we haven't really had any horror stories. Like we've just had the typical headaches, but nothing. Nothing that's just.
Okay.
A lot of the things that happened bad in the past, I would have still wanted to have done them because even though they were not happy times, they either came with a lot of race wins that were like successful and that was good, or I learned a lot and that was worth it.
I got a follow-up question. So your previous business, if you took away your race car and any money spent racing on it, do you think it would have been profitable?
Barely. Like, the problem was I was really young. I had not been exposed to that corporate world before. I figured the reason we weren't making money was because I was not good enough and my guys were not good enough. If I could install coilovers in 2 hours and my guys would do it in 3.5, I would charge a customer 2 hours. Even though it would take a dealer tech 6 hours to do that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely,
customers will always complain about price. Even if you do it for $20, they'll be like, oh. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, someone's always going to think that they could have gotten it cheaper or their friend could have done it for them for free or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always listening to my customers too much and feeling guilty. Even though we were running a business of building full-blown race cars where nothing was like, stuff wasn't even bolt-on. Like we were trying to build bolt-on hours for stuff that we were fabricating. Like we were building exhausts for cars and we were charging like, $900. And in Canada, you can't even buy an exhaust mass produced for $900.
Yeah, the materials are more.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the materials might have been like $500 or $600, and we were making like $300 on labor for a full day's work of fabricating, or like a day and a bit. Like they were TIG welded, like they were like done properly, like just not charging. I should have been charging more than double what I charged, but I would have never gotten there had I not gone into the corporate world and been like woken up, because I had never worked for a shop before. I had never seen. I had never been a customer of a shop before. I had no reference.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go on to something more exciting here. Tell us something you're doing right now that has you fired up.
So part of OnPoint Dyno, kind of what we're doing is a lot of electronics, and I'm trying to look into where the future is going, and one of those things was electric cars. So we built this electric Lotus Evora, and that's got me fired up. We just had it out drag racing yesterday. I think yesterday.
How did
I don't even
do?
remember what I did yesterday. And like first pass 11.5.
Okay.
Which is pretty good for a car that does 13 stock, and even the highest horsepower one you can get does like a 12.5. So pretty cool for a full interior, fully street car on street tires. Like, this is comparable to like a stock Porsche GT3, or I think it's even faster than the Ferrari 458. I think a 458 is like 11.5 or something, and we did 11.4 at the end of the day. And we had done some traction control in the M150, and it just worked so well. Like we had traction issues, but you could hardly even feel it. When you look at the data, and there was just the right amount of slip. And so I was really, really pumped at how well that car worked on the drag strip, because it wasn't supposed to be a drag racing car. It's kind of lapping day car,
Okay, so it can do a full lap around a track then, or several, I'm guessing, huh?
Yeah, we've had it at the track once, and you can run it for like 15 minutes or so. But to have the most power for time attack, you really only have the first 1 or 2 laps, because as the battery depletes,
Yeah,
you
power
get less
drops off.
power.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You should definitely race that thing in the Optima Streetcar Challenge stuff.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I never actually thought about that, but I think it would be a good fit because it's a really comfy street car.
Uh-huh.
And it's really capable on the racetrack.
Yeah, and I think you'd kill everybody in the design and engineering because you built it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
They
do
judge it that way?
Yeah, they do a design and engineering. I know some of it is like car showy stuff, but like as long as the car is
Okay.
like full interior, I mean, you basically have completely redone the entire car, so that's a big bonus for you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's definitely something that I want to do. I would love to go down to the States and show it to some kind of key people in the industry. Because in Canada, we only have so much reach.
You're right.
I'd love to take it to California, and I know a couple of people that work at Tesla, and just see.
So did you get any help from Tesla on that one?
No,
Oh, not even people who worked for it, or was it just like all yourself?
the people that work for Tesla, they're not allowed to say anything. They
Oh.
can basically just kind of show enthusiasm for what you're doing, and kind of tell you how close to optimal you are, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Like I'll say, like, this is how much torque I have to like make the car roll, like how much friction there is to make the car roll, and they'll be like, okay, that's really bad. I'm like, okay, that's it.
Gotcha. So no help there. Even though I always thought that was like a big thing with Elon Musk, was to make his patents and everything open, so that way you could kind of like use the technology. So I mean, you're using the technology. It's just they're not handing it over to you with help, huh?
Yeah, so the motor and the drive unit, I didn't figure that out. I'm not smart enough to figure that out. There's a guy in Switzerland and another guy in the States that have worked together, that they've been able to decode the OEM, basically the ECU of the drive unit, and reflash it, and then made another module that talks over CAN that tells it, basically makes it think it's still in a Tesla.
Okay.
So it gets the rest of the CAN messages that it needs to be happy. So that module we've integrated in with the rest of our CAN systems in the car. But that stuff I wouldn't have been able to do myself.
So they're basically reverse engineering the ECU from a Tesla, and then I mean similar to what like a Cobb Access Port would be doing, huh?
Yeah, basically. I mean, more or less just making it run.
Okay.
You can't really change anything in that drive unit, and that's kind of the tricky thing about electric motors. There's not very much to tune.
Right.
You know?
I think they have like an advance, and that's it, right? You can there's like a brush advance or something that you can do. I'm not like a big electric motor guy, but from what I gathered, the little RC car guys, like they would turn a piece of the motor to get more advance out of them to make them more aggressive, but they generate more heat when you do that. Is what I've read. But
okay, yeah, this is an AC induction motor, so it's totally different.
Interesting. Okay, and then so this is this engine that you got out of, or the motor you got out of a Tesla. Did you buy that new from Tesla, or is that like did you buy a wreck one and take it out?
So that's the thing. I think that Tesla, maybe in the future, if they sell less cars, would be interested in selling some of the parts that they produce, kind of like GM sells crate engines to guys that want to go drag racing or building hot rods. But right now, Tesla is manufacturing limited, right? They cannot build enough cars. So they're not going to be selling parts. They can't even get parts to the cars that need repairs. They're not going to be selling parts to guys that just want to build cars and go kill themselves and sue Tesla because they lit themselves on fire. Like, they don't want any part of that yet. Maybe one day when they've got like, a big team of lawyers or something.
Okay.
So I bought it from eBay, from a wrecked Model S.
Okay. And you have the 2-wheel drive version.
Yeah, the low power, actually the base model one. But the guys were able to flash it, so it's the equivalent of a performance drive unit, more or less. It doesn't have as much torque. but it has the same power. So up until peak power, it has less power, but the same peak. And it also has a lower maximum engine or motor speed.
Okay.
So it doesn't go as fast, unfortunately.
And they're direct drive, right? They don't have transmissions in them, or do they?
Yeah, it's just a gear reduction into a diff.
Okay. Interesting. So we'll talk more about this in a second, but let's take a break and hear from our sponsor. We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit more about your business, Sasha. So OnPoint Dyno right now, how big is, you said you are renting a space. How big is the space you're in?
Yep, so we've got some space to work on the Lotus and our time attack stuff. That's not even really so much for the business. And then we've also got a dyno cell that we use here that's just basically, 20 feet by 30 feet for dyno tuning customers' cars. And then we've got a trailer that we put the Dynapack in, and that goes to a number of shops. So we're pretty. I think we're trying to be pretty light and keep the costs down, keep the overhead down. We're so service based that I can't scale, so
right.
I can't make more tuners. I have to just keep my costs down.
Okay. And have you ever written a formal business plan?
I wrote a semi-formal business plan. I find what's helped us more has been, or helped me more, has been to just make kind of a yearly goals.
Okay.
Yeah. Every year I'll try and make what I want to achieve for that year and for the next 5 years. And then in 6 months I'll look at it, and then I'll either be happy or depressed.
Right.
At least it gives you you get so caught up in the day-to-day, right? I think all of us do. That if you don't take time, which is nice for us because our winters are fairly slow, so we have time to kind of reboot and think about the business and plan and try and, once spring comes, we just basically are stuck in the day-to-day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the struggles. When you get stuck in the day-to-day, you don't really progress forward. It's just, you're just kind of spinning your wheels. And that's why the business plan, or at least having an annual plan or something to go from, at least, gives you some perspective of what you need to be shooting for.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think if you look at a lot of shops that have been around for 10 or 15 years that have been stagnant, if you go in there, they're probably running around like chickens with their heads cut off all day, every day. And they just never get out of that cycle. And then the next thing you know, you're done. You're retiring.
With no money. Right?
Well, yeah, maybe with no money, or maybe not achieving what they had want to achieve.
Yep.
Or maybe that's exactly where they want to be. But most of them, in my case, like most of the shops that I work with that have been stagnant, they don't want to be where they are. They have dreams to be bigger. Mm-hmm. They just don't make the time to plan for the business.
Okay. So they're working in the business and not on the business.
Yeah. And it's such a hard industry that it's really hard to afford to be able to take any time off.
That's true. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And what's interesting though is when you actually do start focusing on the business, and this is at least for my case, I've gotten to the point where I'm efficient enough where I don't work crazy hours anymore, and I make way more money than I ever did. And so it's a profitable business, and I don't have to spend a ridiculous amount of time on it. And it has enabled me to spend more and more time focusing on how to make the business even more efficient. So I'm to the point where I'm like, I really could just hire anybody now and drop them in, and I could probably not even have to work.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think that's kind of going back to that corporate. How do corporations work? Yeah. I think that as much as we like to hate on them, I think they do have really, really good systems and processes in place for the most part. Mm-hmm. and that's, yeah, without that, without planning, you just, as soon as you lose one of your key mechanics, right, you're done.
Yeah. You have to go back to do it yourself again.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so you said you have one other guy, so it's you and one person, two people?
Yeah. So right now the business kind of operates a little bit like kind of like a doctor's clinic, I guess. So I'm pretty much spending all my time seeing patients, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And he's basically just scheduling customers, answering their questions, doing as much as he can. And then he'll also build wiring harnesses, because we do offer motorsport electronics, harnessing and systems design and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the structure of the business, and I don't really know how to make it any bigger unless we started to either sell a lot of product or start building a lot of harnesses.
Yeah, and that's really hard to do with motorsports, right? There's not a lot of people that can, one, afford it, and two, need it. So
that's the problem, man. Like I'm constantly trying to figure out how to make it cheaper for customers so they can get in, but there's still the time, whether you use cheaper wire and you don't use Raycam to cover the wires, and you use cheaper connectors, it's still the time to lay everything out. And then you look back at it and you're like, well, you just should have just spent another 15% or so to have the good quality materials.
Yeah.
When there's so much time in it, unless it's being mass produced, which it never is for us.
Are you guys busy enough with the harnesses that he's always doing one, or is it like one here, one there, sort of onesie, twosie things?
It's growing with his abilities. So basically, I never marketed to do harnesses unless someone came to me and really wanted one. Okay. Because I didn't have time. So now, as he's getting better, then we can start offering it more, because I don't have to build the majority of the harness. I only have to build, the really intricate bits or so.
Okay. And how do you break down your revenue? Is it part sales, service, dyno tuning, engineering, manufacturing, a little bit of everything, sounds like?
Yeah, the majority of it is dyno tuning and race support. So working at the racetrack as a driver coach and as a kind of car chief. Mm-hmm. So, I'd say 50% of it is dyno tuning, and 45% maybe is dyno tuning service, and 30% is racetrack support stuff, and the rest would be MOTEC sales and harnessing. Okay.
And how many hours a week are you working?
I look at it more as like percent of time that I'm awake.
Okay. Do you ever sleep?
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like I need a fair bit of sleep, so I need like 10 hours of sleep a day. Okay. So to make myself feel better, I look at it as a percentage number of hours. Okay. But I'm pretty much working every waking hour 6 days a week. Okay. In some capacity. Like if you count working on the electric car and working on my race car as work, which you could argue either way, but I consider it work because it does definitely help the business, then I'm pretty much working every waking hour. I mean, I come home and watch maybe one Netflix show and have dinner and then go to bed. So.
And do you have any family?
Yeah, we're expecting a daughter in like 3 weeks. So.
Oh, well, congratulations! And that's about to change
thanks.
Then, huh?
Yeah, so then things will change. I've booked my August kind of to be a lot freer, and then we'll be a little bit busy in September, October, but then it'll slow down for the winter again, and okay, yeah, we'll make some more time for sure.
Is a wife? You're married?
Yes, yeah.
And is she working too right now, or is she?
No, she'll be a stay-at-home mom.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, kids are fun. They do take a lot of time, and they do take you away from car stuff, but they are fun.
I'm pretty excited. It's going to be cool. Okay. It's going to be cool to be able to raise someone that's like, someone you're proud of in society, but you're not like, you go around sometimes and you're just like, what is going on here?
Happens all the time. Yeah. Yeah. But in the same time, though, like I've got two kids, and sometimes I'm like, I got to do more to, like, I feel like I want to teach them more. I want to show them more stuff. And I always like, that's my struggle right now is like, I give them a lot of time, but I just don't think it's enough ever. So I'm always down on myself for not doing more. As bad as that sounds, but
well, I mean, if you're conscious about it like that, then you're probably giving them a lot of time. I think people that don't give their kids a lot of time don't spend time worrying about having not given them enough time.
Hopefully.
They're just so preoccupied with their work that they're not even thinking about it, probably.
Yeah. Okay, and then when you are working, and it sounds like a lot, are you spending your time doing the work, or do you find the time to manage the business? I mean, like, are you able to, like look for ways to improve efficiencies and, improve costs or reduce costs or whatever it may be?
This is something that I really struggle with, having employees. When I was running the business just myself, so up until about 2 years ago, I just ran the dyno business by myself. And then it's a lot easier when you're not on the dyno to sit down and really focus on the computer and do those things to help the business. But I have this bad habit, I guess, of micromanaging a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So if I'm not doing something, instead of putting my mind into how I can work on the business, I'll just go down and micromanage my guy.
All right.
Thinking that he's not being efficient enough, not really taking a step back and realizing that, like, let him be a little bit less efficient, but let me actually do something productive for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I try and work on, but it's definitely a lot harder than when there's no one around.
Okay. And what are you using to manage them? Or I mean, like, I guess the business and the person, and everything. Like, are you using like QuickBooks or we use MSA?
We actually use Xero. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's I think from New Zealand.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I really like it. We don't do a lot of inventory stuff or anything like that, so I don't know how that end of it is, but I just always hated QuickBooks from my original SG Motorsport days.
Yeah.
And that was more my fault than QuickBooks' fault, but I just wanted to. We started with FreshBooks, which I don't know if you've heard of FreshBooks.
Yep, heard of that one too. Uh-huh.
So I started with FreshBooks when I first started OnPoint Dyno, and then I grew to a certain point that I needed to be able to reconcile my expenses and all that, and have bank reconciliation, which FreshBooks was just invoicing. And then the transition to Xero was really good. I find it still really straightforward to use, but it has all of the proper accounting stuff that QuickBooks would have, or QuickBooks does have.
It's like basically like a cloud-based QuickBooks, essentially, right? It's like very similar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The reason that I went with Xero, I think, if I remember now, was it was better at doing multi-currency stuff or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. The QuickBooks Online didn't even have it until very recently.
Okay, that might have been what it was, because we do a fair bit at the States as well.
Yeah, it does it now, but when we first looked at using it, the QuickBooks Online one, it didn't do it, and so we couldn't use it. But that's all changed. So,
Okay.
And do you think the time spent, I guess the pay justifies the time spent in what you're doing?
If it was in any other industry, I would say no. Or if I was working for someone else, I would say no. But because I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I get to spend the business advertising budget on my own race cars, and it doesn't have to come after tax, then yes, it's worth it. I really do enjoy the people that I work with and having new challenges every day, with different types of cars to tune and being able to do cool stuff with electronics. But if you were to like put what I do now into, like, say, industrial building controls, for buildings that have, pumps and HVAC stuff that needs control, like that would be billed out at $300 an hour every hour you work.
Yeah.
That's what that stuff costs. Canadian, so I don't know what it is, US, $250 maybe they charge down there. But in the city in Toronto here, you pay $300 an hour for any kind of building systems control. And like, in comparison, that stuff's really basic. Like, you pretty much just have to make the pump turn on.
Yeah, you don't need a PID controller to get the flow exactly right or something, right?
You might have some basic PID controls for, like, the position of a valve, but like, you're not trying to get, like, the cam timing perfect, and like when you go from 0 to 30 degrees, you can't have any overshoot on the cam advance, and it needs to just hit that target, because otherwise, the engine's losing efficiency and not running very well because the cam is flapping all around. Like, in a building, it doesn't really matter if the valve moves a bit. and everything happens at a super slow speed anyway, because it's, you know,
a building.
It's a building. So yeah, if you compare the businesses that way, you're never going to be satisfied. But the fact that I really enjoy what I do, and people that I work with are passionate, that makes up for it.
Very cool. And then I want to talk a little bit more about the electric car. So what are the business implications of that? Like, is that something you want to like manufacture these cars? Like, do you want to buy a bunch of Evoras and convert them all to electric, or is it just kind of a proof of concept? And then, because I know you have a MOTEC dash on that thing, right? A MOTEC is either, I don't know if it's just pulling data or if you're using it to, monitor the electric motor at all, or the batteries. What exactly are you doing with that? And how are you going to convert this into like a business, or how would you like to convert it into a business opportunity?
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about the business end of the car first, and then remind me about the MOTEC stuff, because I don't want to forget to talk about that, because that stuff's cool. Basically, the way I look at it is, I know electric cars are going to be coming, and I know that they were coming a few years ago, and now it's like for sure. Now it's pretty hard for anyone to come in and say, no, I don't think electric cars are going to be significant. Like, pretty much in 30 years, there's a really, really high chance that the majority of cars on the road will be electric. Or the majority of new cars sold will be electric.
Yeah, I would believe that. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I knew that, and I kind of also feel bad for like just having shown no respect to the environment at all, or having any thought to it growing up. Like, I just didn't think that it mattered. I didn't think that the planet cared what we did. I thought it would just be fine. And now we're kind of seeing that, like, no, it does care. You can't just burn all the fuel that's been collecting over millions of years, over the course of like 200 years, and think it's not going to change anything. Like, it's not okay. So I'm starting to care a bit more about that, and seeing how electric cars kind of kill two birds with one stone. And I thought, okay, from the outside, I have no idea how this industry works. I don't know, I don't know how complicated motors are. I don't know how batteries work. I don't know what the electrical control stuff's like. I don't know what charging stations are like. I don't know how involved people are in this industry, if they like racing even. So I said, I just need to build a car, just like everything else I've ever done. I didn't get into racing by watching. I got into racing by building a car. I got into drifting by building a car. I got into time attack by building a car. Like, for me, the only way I know how to do anything, it seems, is to just build a car and show up. So I said, what would be the best car to use? Like, the motor was pretty obvious, because you can't get a motor of comparable power to a Tesla drive unit. Just, you can't. Like, available. Like you could get one custom built, but it would be like 40,000 US or so.
Okay.
So that was a no-brainer. And then the batteries, the Chevy Volt batteries, were pretty much the ones to get. And then the car, I wanted to get something that was really rare, that was a really well-performing chassis, and that had enough value that it wouldn't be a waste of money to spend all this time and effort on like a $10,000 car. In the end, you just have an electric $10,000 car.
Right.
So the Evora was a really cool car that I think's not really. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen one on the road before. I had never seen one on the road before.
I don't think I have either.
So it's kind of cool, because no one knows what it is, and so yeah, that was it. And so that's kind of the long answer to your question. I thought, I have to get into this thing, and I want to use my strengths in racing and building racing cars and with motorsport electronics, and apply that to how guys normally build electric cars, which is kind of like someone that's got really, really good electrical engineering skills, but no fabrication skills and no like race prep skills. So like, they'll design their own circuit board and program, all the logic in an Arduino, and it'll be really impressive considering. But then all the wiring will be done with like Home Depot wire and like, little like, it's like you couldn't, it's not even close to the level that reflects their knowledge in that one area. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to make it as clean and OEM integrated as possible. And so that kind of brings to the MOTEC stuff. there's a C1212, which is the 12-inch dash. And I just ordered it. Like I looked at the dash and I said, there's no way this thing's going to fit. But I knew I didn't want a C127 because I wanted it to be big.
Okay.
So we just ordered a C1212 and just hacked up this, like the Lotus is pretty new. And we just took a Sawzall and just cut gaping holes in the dash so that the thing would fit. And just committed to it. But then we had an upholstery shop do a nice job, and they had to modify the shape a bit so that it covered these bulges out of the top of the dash. And that the MOTEC does mostly the dash is just a display because all of the control is done with the M150. So using M1 Build with the M150, we're using the MOTEC, if you can imagine, like an Arduino. The ECU is not doing any engine-related control at all. It doesn't have any engine-related logic in it anymore. Like,
yeah, you don't need fuel and ignition, and you don't need boost control, and you don't need, temperature control, fans and stuff like that. Oh, you might have temperature control, I would assume, but yeah, there's a lot less.
Yeah,
startup.
There's a lot.
You don't have startup and idles and all that sort of thing, right?
Yeah. So, but what we are doing in the MOTEC is we're doing all of the power request to the Tesla drive unit. So we're controlling like the traction control, and it's really working pretty well. So it's just like drive-by-wire, pedal goes into the ECU, and then based on speed and lateral G and slip and all this stuff, it just calculates how much torque to request of the drive unit and then sends that to the drive unit. And it does all sorts of other stuff, like it's monitoring all 192 individual cells of the battery. So there's 192 individual voltages and like 30 temperatures being monitored all the time. It's just this huge list of voltages of every cell. There's like tons of temperature sensors and limits. And then there's a ton of stuff just for the charging. So basically the high power charging for the car, you can go and plug into these level 3 chargers, just like if you had a brand new OEM electric car. And to make that stuff work, there's a lot of CAN messaging and mechanical circuits or electrical circuits that have to be correct too, with the right resistor values and opening and circuits and closing circuits at the right time. So the MOTEC controls all of that. And it's very rare, I think, that people have level 3 charging on electric cars that they build. But it's kind of really important if you want to be able to drive the car to the racetrack. You need to be able to charge it in 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then the M150 also does all of the like OEM vehicle integration so that the ABS can keep working, and the stability control can keep working, and all that. So it's kind of just like a vehicle controller instead of an engine controller.
Okay.
But it's been this incredible journey into learning the basics of programming, because when I started this 7 months ago, I didn't even know what a variable was. I didn't know anything about programming,
Okay. So you were doing all the programming yourself, or was that with help of the guys that do the engine that did the engine I guess reverse engineering?
No, they just supplied me with that and drive unit controller and told me which CAN messages I needed to send for like battery current and battery voltage and that sort of thing. And then the rest was up to me.
And you said you pulled the battery out of a Chevy Bolt. How heavy is the battery?
Chevy Volt, the hybrid one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So there's two, so it's 2 Chevy Volts worth of batteries.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And each battery is about 320 pounds. So the total weight of the drive unit and the 2 batteries was about 1,000 pounds.
Okay, that's not terrible.
And no, it's not terrible. The weight of all of the gas stuff, so the fuel tank, the intake, the exhaust, the cats, the motor, transmission, the shifter cables, like everything that we could remove was 800 pounds.
Okay, so you only added 200 pounds to the car.
So we only added 200 pounds. And in the end, that's what it was. It was 3,000 when we started, and now it's 3,200.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah, but that's full interior, you know, like it's like a street car.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah, the problem with that is the battery's not huge, so the range isn't like it should have a much bigger battery, ideally.
Well, I was just like in my head here while you're talking, I'm like thinking like all you would need to do is make that battery hot swappable, where you just unplug it, you know, like pull it out, put a new one in at the track, and then you could be ready to go in like 2 minutes, and then just have a charger on the side of the track and just charge your backup battery. But if they're 300 pounds each, you need 2 of them. That's it's a lot harder to do, right?
Yeah, but now the new logic is just charge them really fast.
Okay.
Like, I can charge that battery from 0 to 80% in like 30 minutes.
Okay, so you're just running a ton of current through it. That's your level 3 you're charging, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And that's when you've got an even bigger battery, you can charge it much faster. So now they're coming out with 350 kilowatt chargers. So, you know, that's like 1,000 kilometers of range of charging per hour.
Okay.
You couldn't leave it plugged in. You couldn't charge at that level for an hour, but that's the rate at which it would charge for the first 20 minutes or so. So, you know, it's comparable pretty much to getting gas.
Yeah. No, the only problem with, well, I guess it's not a problem, but like in the States here, my electricity bill, part of it is the delivery charge. So that's like
Right.
your peak kilowatt, you know? So if it were 350 kilowatts, I would be paying a huge amount of extra.
Like yeah.
Not just kilowatt hours, it's the kilowatt,
The
you know?
peak, yeah. The energy used in a moment. Yeah. I think that that's going to be really tough, and I think that the solution to that is going to be that all these big charging stations are going to have battery packs to buffer
it, yeah, like
the
capacitors
draw.
or something, yeah.
Yeah. But it's cool. Like, it's a whole different set of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, with our electric car, the coolant doesn't overheat. Like, it's not the water that gets hot. It's just the motor, the inverter itself can't transfer the heat into the water.
Okay.
So the inverter's overheating, but it's not like you just need to like put bigger fans on the radiator. That's not the problem.
So you have a heat transfer problem going from the inverter to
Right.
the water.
Yeah, and it's not a simple thing to be fixed. It's just the IGBTs get so hot, and they just don't
Then you can't just
they don't transfer heat.
You can't just bolt a little copper heat sink in, run water through it onto it. It's not like that, right?
It's already in. That's already what it's already in water. It's already being water cooled.
Okay.
But the heat's just not being transferred through the I guess the semiconductor, if that's even what it's called, to the surface where the water is fast enough.
Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, there's all kinds of problems like this that when you have a mechanical or car background, you just said the same thing that I said the first time. Like, well, why can't we just cool it?
Right.
because you can't. It's and I still don't understand it enough. I'm still at such an elementary level. The best way to compare it would be like to say I'm at a level of like understanding similar to when if you were to open the hood of an engine bay, you could identify where the turbo was, but you didn't really know where the intake inlet and compressor outlet and manifold exhaust inlet and downpipe exit was.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like my level. So there's so much still to learn. I mean, just how AC motors work and how to control them, that alone would take years to understand fully.
Cool. I'm very intrigued by this because I want to get a Tesla very badly. So, but then I'm going to want to modify it, right? That's going to be the problem. So.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to work, man. Like, everything's going to be connected to the internet. So, like, if you were to reflash a road-driven Tesla would know about it in 30 seconds.
They get mad at you. Huh?
I don't know what would happen. Like, I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if you're just going to have to, like, unplug the internet connection from your car, but then I'm pretty sure your autopilot self-driving stuff is all going to stop working.
Well, that's the reason I want to buy it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I have to do like you and just buy a wrecked Tesla and take the engine out of it and build a kit car. That's what I'll have to do.
Yeah, I think that might be, it might become popular. People worry a lot about the
LS
safety.
swap, right?
Well, you joke about it, but I was talking to my friend about it. It's like an LS swap is cheap, kind of, but you still need to build an exhaust. You still need to build an intake. You still need to do the fuel system. Like the motor might be cheap, but there's still a lot of stuff that needs to connect to an engine to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
With a motor, you literally just connect 2 3/4-inch water lines and 2 really big power cables.
And you're done, right? And some mounts to put it in there.
Right. Yeah. But that's it. I mean, to do an electric swap really, really simply, it's like just 2 big contactors, which are just like big relays, batteries, 2 fuses, and the motor and the cooling loop for the motor.
So how much time did it take you to do yours?
Not very long. We started in November.
Okay.
And it was very part-time. Like we would go weeks without touching it.
Okay.
It was pretty much take the rear clamshell off and the rear frame unbolts from that car.
Okay.
And we just chopped everything out for where the motor would mount. And we just sat the drive unit in place, measured it all up, and just made mounts just like you would do for an engine, different engine swap that you were going to do. And mounting the batteries. Mounting the batteries was the hardest part. So that's not even that, like it's just making mounts. So
are you going to have this thing in SEMA? You going to bring it to SEMA or PRI or anything?
I don't know. I think if someone asked me to bring it in their booth, I would consider it.
I think you need to go to you definitely need to go to an Optima Streetcar Challenge race, and then I'll talk to Cam Douglas, who's one of the guys over at Optima, about getting it in their booth. Although
cool.
You're not running their battery, so that might be a problem, right?
Well, we could put an Optima 12-volt battery in. Although right now it's an anti-gravity battery, but it could be swapped out.
But it's just so cool, and the fact that their racing series will allow that kind of thing is pretty cool. So
yeah, I love it. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I hope and that's kind of what I'm trying to learn more about and maybe be able to develop components for would be maybe because right now if you want to build a performance EV, you just have to try and make OEM components work, right?
Right.
And you can't upgrade them at all. Like if you wanted to upgrade the motor, like get rid of the stuff that's cheap production parts and replace the cheap IGBTs with more efficient IGBTs that wouldn't get as hot, or try and get more cooling through to the rotor of the motor or something like this. There's just nothing available, and there probably won't be anything available for a long time. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking might be. It might be a possibility in the future. I don't know how that's going to shape out, because right now, if you want to buy race car like EV parts, like you're pretty much going to McLaren or Williams, like Formula One teams.
F1 teams, you know? Yep.
And you can imagine what that stuff costs.
But you know that our industry, we love to take things apart and we love to make things faster. So you're kind of like at the spear tip of this, where you're dabbling in what can be done, and apparently a lot can be done. So people are going to want to start doing it, or a lot needs to be done, if that's the answer, right? If trying to figure out how to cool them is something that needs to be done, somebody's going to want to do it.
If you don't want to drag race, if you want to drag race, it doesn't matter. But if you want to do 20 minutes or 30 minutes on the racetrack, then yeah, cooling is an issue.
That's what I want to do. I want to build a road course. I don't care about the drag race.
Yeah. Like the first lap, we did a time attack, not a time attack. We did run the Lotus on the same track that we do time attack at. That's kind of the local Canadian kind of Button Willow or whatever. And it matched what a GT3 almost matched, like 3 or 4 tenths off what a new 991 Porsche GT3 did on the same tires. on like its first time at the track.
And this is like with the stock suspension and everything. So you haven't done
Stock suspension.
Okay, so you're going all out stock other than the drivetrain.
Yeah, but the dampers are really good on the Lotus.
Okay.
It needs more camber. It needs a lot more front camber, but like the dampers, that track's pretty bumpy and slow. So I think if you were to put motorsport suspension on it, you might even go a touch slower. We did put a Quaife diff in the Tesla drive unit though. Someone makes one of those, believe it or not.
All right. Okay, so let's take another break here, and then we'll continue on with some more questions about yourself. Hey, Do It For Living listeners. If you own a shop or are looking to start a shop and want more information on how to run it better, now's your chance. We're hosting an Essentials of Operating a Shop class at the Turn 14 headquarters outside of Philadelphia, PA. The class will be held on August 19th, and for more information, please check out our webpage or our Facebook page on how to sign up. All right, Sasha, what's something you struggle with in business, and how are you dealing with it?
My biggest struggle is working with employees. And it's been my whole life. Like I've got a new guy now who's really, really good, young and really passionate, but I'm just super impatient, and I have fairly high expectations. And I guess I struggle to kind of think back to when I was starting out or when I knew less, you know?
So here really shortly, you're going to either have to like put more reliance in them, or the business is going to suffer if you have to watch out for a new kid too, huh?
Yep. Yeah, that's my biggest struggle. That's always been my problem, is that I look at it like the customers expect a high level of service, and if I know one of my employees has less experience or less knowledge than I do, then I feel like I have to watch over what they do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that I just need to accept that the way business works is that you can't run at that level because it's not sustainable. You have to, you can't, every email you get from a customer, I can't personally answer it back. So every now and then my guy's going to say something that's not 100% totally accurate. It might be true, but it might be written a little bit wrong. So I have to just accept that, and I have a hard time, not wanting to micromanage everything.
Well, that's why it's just me and Richard at my shop. I micromanaged a lot too, and then I just get frustrated with fixing mistakes. So now I'm just happy with where I'm at right now. So
yeah, but I think you and I are the type of people that maybe we're just too I wouldn't say nitpicky, but like we just want to make sure everything's too perfect. And I think if you look at people that have really big businesses, they just want to keep going in the right direction.
Yeah. They're much better at accepting not perfect.
Yeah. Even if they're making some mistakes and some customers are unhappy because a big mistake was made, most of the customers are really, really happy. And most of the jobs are perfect. And that guy learned, and he's not going to make that mistake again. So let's just keep improving and keep going. Whereas I'm like, oh, I can never make a mistake like that. That is just, I cannot let that happen. I cannot let, something like that happen ever. But then I'm stuck having to look at everything myself all the time.
What is your 1-year plan for the business?
Right now, the 1-year plan was pretty much to build this electric car and get into the industry. So now, I need to start making more of an effort to network and meet with people in the industry.
Is there
and
an
show
industry?
them the car?
I don't know. There's
a
big...
huge industry. There's a huge industry, but it's not the performance industry. It's the road car and charging industry.
Okay.
But I want to understand if there's investment opportunities there, because I feel like the charging infrastructure is going to one day be a profitable thing.
Uh-huh.
And I'm kind of trying to see if there's something there for us to be able to have some sort of, if we could own some charging stations or help design some sort of charging solutions or something like this. I would love to have some kind of recurring revenue, when I retire.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something I'm thinking about, both for 1 and 5 years. And then the other thing for 1 year is just having my new guy here who's starting, kind of like we talked about, giving him more responsibility and really working on pushing more sales. Because right now, I just sell things as people come to me and ask for them.
Right, I got you.
And I think there's so many people that could benefit from data and having a dash in their car. I want to make an effort to kind of try and spread the word a bit better. Maybe go to some PCA days and, show what these kinds of things can do to guys on the racetrack that are already there. Maybe BMW club events, stuff like that.
Yeah, I've always struggled with trying to get new customers like that. And I always, I always thought if I had a car that I could just bring to every event and just put somebody in it and let them take a lap and then show them the data, that would sell it on them. But they kind of, you can kind of just buy a TrackMate and just slap it in anybody's car. Or you can buy a, AIM Solo and stick it in anybody's car, and they can at least get lap times. They're not getting engine data, but it's at least, is it getting them in the right direction? I don't know. I just, again,
for sure it is. But like when you're relying on like a 10 hertz GPS, it's just the data's like you're only seeing like 0.3 of a second improvements or 0.2 of a second improvements. You're not seeing if a guy is pretty decent, it's just not fast enough. You need to have real wheel speeds or at least like a very high sampling GPS.
Are you doing that data acquisition with William?
With Will from PZ Tuning?
Yeah. Are you doing that stuff for him?
So basically, Will, we just got him hooked up with MOTEC.
Okay.
So we've just installed all of like a C125 dash logger and an M130 ECU on his car and built him a harness and all this. So yeah, we're going to get to the track and basically train Will on how to use it all and show him as much as we can. But we're not going with him to every event and doing it for him.
Okay. Was he doing anything before?
He had an AIM in the car.
Okay.
And he would look at his data with guys for sure. But I think he was just doing it all with GPS speed, and I don't even know if he could log all 4 wheel speeds.
Okay.
With a front wheel drive car, like you have to log all 4 wheel speeds. The front wheels are spinning all the time, and one of the rear wheels is pretty much stopped entering every corner. So,
okay,
you have to have a good ground speed strategy to figure out the speed the car's actually going.
Okay, very interesting. So, that car is super fast already. So, it sounds like you are hopeful that he'll even pick up more time with more data, huh?
Yeah, the car had, electronics wise, it was really below what it could be potential wise. Like the traction control it has is just a set amount of slip and a 100% ignition cut, so really aggressive, and it can't tell whether you're turning or not. So like you can imagine that there'd be a big room for improvement there, right?
Mm-hmm.
The boost control that he had was an on-off switch. There was no throttle-based control, so you could be coming out of a corner or coming into a corner at 100% throttle, and you just want to breathe a bit. You just want to like reduce like 100 horsepower, which in his car is like only 10%. Like it's 15%. So in his case, he had to keep pulling throttle out until the throttle blade physically choked the motor, because the boost controller was still putting in the same duty all the time, trying to keep the boost at that high value.
Okay.
So it makes the throttle really like an on-off switch, which in a front-wheel drive car, I have to imagine what must be really, really difficult coming out of corners. So now he'll be able to come out of a corner and keep the throttle at 50% and just have 9 pounds of boost. And then, he can kind of squeeze the throttle more of like a naturally aspirated engine feel, and have traction control that's going to be more sensitive when he's turning. And so I have to feel like we're going to make some improvements, even aside from the fact that he'll have really good data to be able to review now.
Okay. All right. And then just touching on your 5-year plan, you said you're hoping for charging station stuff. Like, I never even thought of that business model, but there's gotta be millions of gas stations, but that's basically the same idea, right? Just you can fit them in anywhere. You don't need to own property to do it. You just need a parking spot, right?
Yeah, I don't know the business model yet. That's what I'm struggling with. All I know is that there's going to be electric cars. That's really all I know. I mean, the charging might all just be done through the road, inductively. Or the batteries might be so big that charging's not even an issue. Although I feel like people are always going to just forget to charge their car and need to charge it somewhere else. Like humans are not good at planning. So yeah, but I think there's an opportunity for someone that's got technical knowledge and electrical knowledge to go to businesses and say, look, here you could install a charging station, make some money, have more customers come into your business because they need to charge their car, and have someone manage it for you or invest in it. And that's what a lot of these charging companies are doing now. So I'm just not sure if there's room in there for the small guy or not. But I hope somewhere there is.
Yeah, I just I'm like you again. I've never even thought about it, and so now you've got my mind wondering what there is there. But I feel like everybody around here does it for free. But I don't have an electric car, so I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's all going to be free for the next little bit.
Because Tesla's already changed that. They're not free for new customers anymore.
Right. If you get the new Model 3 or whatever, it's not free anymore. Is it even not for the Model S?
Yeah, no, the Model S and Model X, both of those too. You don't get free charging with them anymore. I think they do
really?
like maybe like an allowance of like 1,000 miles worth of charging a year or something. I don't really know, but
right. But yeah, that's the thing. So basically, it's going to be free to kind of get people hooked, and then at some point, people need to see the value. I mean, you go and buy a water bottle or a bottle of water at a basketball game. It's not 10 cents. Yes, you can get it at home for 10 cents. We get it. But at the basketball game, it's $3 or $4. The same thing when you're charging your car in 20 minutes somewhere. It's going to be more expensive because you're getting that convenience. So
you can start at Sasha's mobile car rescue charging. Right.
Hey, man, maybe see, there you go. I didn't even think about that. What we do with the Lotus right now when it's low is we hook it up to my truck and tow it. And because it's got regen, you can use the motor as a generator and charge the battery.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
We did that at the track yesterday because we got there and it was only 40% and we wanted to go drag racing. So we needed the 100% and we didn't want to wait for the slow charger that they have at the track to go. So we just towed it around for 30 minutes and it was full.
Very cool.
So yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities and it's like a really changing time. And I'm hoping that all this money and time we've invested into this electric car is going to pay off. But right now I'm still looking at a bit of a haze.
All right. We like to take action and do it for a living. Can you suggest an action item our listeners can take away to improve their situation?
One thing that I find most people that I deal with anyways, or that I meet, they don't read anymore.
I'm guilty.
Like they go on the internet and it's like, dude, like you could get like a Carol Smith book. And yeah, maybe it's from the 80s, but you could learn so much just from reading that book and get such a good base. Like the internet gives you like spikes of knowledge. Like you'll learn a lot about a very, very narrow thing. But in a book, like someone's actively put in a lot of effort to give you like a really good foundation of knowledge in that subject. So I feel like my advice would be go order whatever you're interested in, whether it's tuning engines or vehicle dynamics or fabrication. Just get a couple books. I feel like if I have to think about when I started to really feel like I was kind of doing well and kind of maybe excelling, it was after I started reading. I remember this. I ordered like 10 books, Carol Smith books, and I've got them all. There's like lots of really, really good ones. Data analysis books, electrical books, and over like that winter I read them all, and that foundation has stuck with me still, and I still reference that. Like I don't think I remember stuff I read on forums and referencing that like ever. So
So books. Actually, now that I think about it, I'm learning how to program, so I am reading a book right now. It's an actual textbook just on my computer. So, but okay, very cool.
That's, yeah, I'm the same with you. Like learning programming is, everyone's going to need to know programming. Like my daughter is going to need to know how to program.
Yeah, I'm trying to
She's
teach
gonna
my
be-
kids to do it. I want them to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, you're basically going to be a programmer when you're older, or be programming part of what you do, or you're going to just be like, you might have a job, but you wouldn't like you. The only reason you have that job is because
Somebody has
we feel
programmed
bad.
it yet.
Yeah, we just feel bad, and we're not going to put a machine there. But a machine could do it. But like, we don't want a whole bunch of people they're out of jobs, so we just have people still doing stuff, even though, like, even though a machine could do it way better and faster.
Oh, okay. So moving on to the quick, I mean, we're like very similar minds here. Like I'm of the same mindset. Like I personally believe in 5 to 10 years, there will be nobody driving semis. So,
Right.
But anyway, moving on to the quick answer questions. These are just whatever comes to mind first. So tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
Okay, this is a product that I've seen in the last year, but it's been around for a lot longer. I started using M1 Build to do this Lotus, right? Which is what I was telling you about, was where you can basically set the ECU to just a blank slate and write all of your own code.
Yeah.
And that for me was groundbreaking, because when I was getting into programming, it was basically like a blank page and you just type in the functions and like, okay, let's say I make a traction control strategy, and then I flash it somehow to this Arduino.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to go in now and I want to change one of the parameters. I need to go back in, I need to open the software, I need to find the line, change the value, save it, upload it. And I still don't have any sort of, you and I are like from a tuning kind of background. So we're used to having this nice interface to adjust parameters, be able to download data, look at the logs. So that's what M1 Build is. It combines that being able to tune and change parameters and modify your program and look at the data. It combines all that with a really, really powerful kind of programming language where you can do anything you could do with an Arduino and more. You can just drag and drop stuff in. Like you can just drag and drop in a sensor. You can just drag and drop an output. In an Arduino, just making a sensor read and have all the functions a sensor needs to have, like diagnostics if the voltage is too low or too high, and like have debounce. So if you just kind of like, if the button just kind of bounces a bit, it doesn't go on, off, on, off, on, off.
Mm-hmm.
It stays on. Like all that stuff is just drag and drop. It's in there, done. And since I've started using M1 Build, I've looked at, tried to find an equivalent somewhere else. Like this, like MOTEC couldn't have just come up with it out of nowhere. Surely there must be something like this out there, and I still haven't found something comparable. So.
I think it's very much like MATLAB Simulink. So MathWorks makes MATLAB, and MATLAB has a toolbox called Simulink where everything is drag and drop inside of it, and then you can compile it all and dump it on an ECU if you wanted.
Okay, well maybe I need to play with Simulink then. Not to take anything away from MOTEC.
And I think you can actually use Simulink to build stuff for the M1 Build stuff, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I believe you can.
Okay, well, now you've got me interested. I'm going to go look this up.
But yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that stuff too. I haven't messed with it, but I'm familiar with what it is. So, what software are you using daily?
Just the tuning tools, like whatever I'm tuning that day. And then administrative stuff. I use the Google Suite, so.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing super exciting there. Like the same old stuff. We do Photoshop for us,
Okay.
marketing things.
And what about your favorite app? Are you a Facebook junkie like myself?
I hate Facebook because I just when my mind goes blank, I just open a new tab and press FAC enter, and it's like, oh, why did I go to Facebook again? I didn't want to do that. It's like a habit. Yeah, most of the apps I have on my phone, I try and keep my phone like light and just have the Google Gmail calendar, stuff like that. And then on the computer, nothing super fancy. I use this PlugShare app to know where there's charging stations.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Are you driving that car every day?
Not every day, but like I drive it. Like I drove it to the racetrack to go drag racing yesterday.
Okay.
It's like 2 hours away. I drive it around. Like, it's just not waterproof yet, but yeah, it's just a good car that just drives around now, like just like a normal car.
Very cool. And what's your favorite shop tool?
My Dynapack.
Okay, the dyno. That's a very common answer.
It's so good. Yeah, it just works every day.
And if you're not driving the electric car every day, what is your daily?
Nissan Titan.
Okay.
Pickup truck.
So that's what you're towing it with if you need to. Tow to charge.
Yeah, so good for the environment.
Yeah, right. And that's going to give you a lot of shit. Like, oh, you bought an electric car to save the environment, and then you tow it with a gas truck, right?
Such a good conversion of gasoline to electricity.
Okay. And how do we get a hold of you?
Our website's onpointdyno.com, and on social media, it's just OnPoint Dyno.
Okay. Well, Sasha, I really appreciate you taking the time to answer some questions and talk with us and share your story.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast.